Good day, class. Our topic today is about biodiversity. So we have here different pictures of different biodiversity. Let's take a look on each pictures. So the first picture is probably a land, while the second picture is on water. So both land or water, sama na natin yung sa aerial, sama na rin natin yung mga nasa ilalim ng lupa. Lahat yan ay iba't ibang uri ng biodiversity. And before we move forward to our topic about biodiversity, let me remind you that there are threats to biodiversity. Mula noon hanggang ngayon, eto pa rin ang mga threats sa ating biodiversity na talagang ramdam na natin, lalo na ngayon. So, what are these threats? Habitat destruction, alien invasive species, the pollution, overpopulation, hybridization, climate change, and diseases. All of them leading to threats to every biodiversity that we have. So let's find out how can we lessen these threats by learning what is biodiversity. So today we will be discussing biodiversity, classifying and naming organisms. Let's watch this first.
Hi, I'm Emerald Robinson, and in this What Is video, we're going to examine the Earth's wide variety of organisms through a concept called biodiversity. Biodiversity, short for biological diversity, simply means that all life is different. The Earth is home to organisms that have different genes, live in different habitats, and function in different ecosystems. Scientists study three main types of biodiversity: species, genetic, and ecosystem. A species is a group of genetically distinct organisms that can have offspring. To date, over 1.7 million species have been named, and new kinds of plants, animals, fungi, and microorganisms are being discovered all the time. Scientists have predicted that there are between 3 and 30 million species on Earth. Genetic biodiversity means that the genes within a species vary. For example, all dogs belong to the same species, but there are many different breeds that have genes for different traits, such as size, color, and coat type. Ecosystem biodiversity means that ecosystems, communities of living things, are different from one another. For example, some ecosystems are warm and wet like tropical rainforest, and others are cold and dry like Arctic tundras. Biodiversity is not consistent from place to place. Because warm areas are able to support so many different kinds of life, places near the equator tend to have a high amount of biodiversity, while areas near the poles have a much lower biodiversity. Biodiversity is important because all species in an ecosystem have a role to play. When one or more of these species is eliminated, an ecosystem's balance will suffer, and other species are forced to migrate or become extinct. A diverse ecosystem is strong and able to withstand natural disasters, disease, and drought. With an estimated 1/3 of all species in danger of extinction, habitat conservation is more important than ever.
For thousands of how-to and advice videos on any topic, visit monkeysee.com.
Ayan. So nakita natin from the video na yung biodiversity napakalawak niya. Depende sa area, merong high biodiversity, meron din naman low biodiversity tulad ng mga nasa poles. Okay, sa North Pole, South Pole, yan, mga malalamig yan. So, low biodiversity. Pag high biodiversity, hitik na hitik yung mga species na nakatira doon, and nag-i-interact talaga sila with one another. Okay? So, yung mga conservation ng mga habitats are very important para hindi tayo nagkakaroon ng dangers or threats sa ating biodiversity. Remember, we have different organisms living in that particular biodiversity. So, dapat hindi sila ma-extinct, ma-threatened, ma-endangered, kasi bawat organisms may role silang ginagampanan sa ating environment at sa isa't isa. So, when we say biodiversity, these are a variety of organisms living on Earth. What are the levels of biodiversity? First, species diversity, which means there are different kinds of organisms living in this particular area, which are interacting with one another. Next is genetic diversity, the genetic information that organisms contain. So, dito sa genetic diversity, tinutukoy dito yung pagkaka-pare-pares ng gene nila. Okay? And how they are different from others as well. So, meron tayong mga humans, nire-relate niya tayo sa mga unggoy, no? Kasi meron tayong resemblance with them. So, it has something to do with the genes daw, okay, na kino-contain natin na related dun sa mga unggoy. Okay? So, when we are talking of the genetic informations that organism contains, kinabibilangan niya is genetic diversity. Kanina yung species na mga magkakaparehas naman na organism. This one naman yung sa genes. Next, ecosystem diversity. So, different kind of places where organisms live and interconnections that bind these organisms together. So, kanina, species, then next is yung gene related. Ito naman, yung mismong ecosystem, yung place na kinabibilangan ng organism na yun and how they are interacting. Paano sila nabubuhay doon? Ayan, nagsasama-sama sila doon. Kahit magkaiba sila, pero dahil kinabibilangan nila yung same ecosystem na yun, mabubuhay sila doon at interconnected sila. Okay? So, there are different kinds also of ecosystem diversity. Okay? And mahalaga na meron tayong iba't ibang uri ng ecosystem diversity kasi nga, iba't ibang uri ng organisms, may kanya-kanyang buhay yan. Okay? May kanya-kanyang role na dapat gampanan. Now, let's classify and name organisms. For organisms to be studied and information about them shared to those who need it, scientists group them into meaningful classification. Noong unang panahon, konti pa lang yung mga organisms na pag-eeksperimentohan at naaral. So, napakahalaga sa kanila na makategorize sila ng tama para yung mga susunod na makikita nila, maigugrupo nila din ng tama dun sa tamang magkakasama at sa kinabibilangan talaga nila na group. No? So, nagkaroon sila ng sistema, yung mga scientists, kung paano nila ika-classify yung mga yon. The different groups are ranked from largest to the smallest groups. Large groups include many organisms with few similarities. So, nirank pala nila yon mula sa pinakamalaki hanggang pinakamaliit. Siyempre, kapag malaki, konti lang yung mga pagkakapares nila. Pero pag paliit na siya ng paliit, doon na natin nakikita na mas connected sila sa isa't isa. Small groups include few organisms having more similarities. Yon. Organisms which have more similarities would then be closely related than those which have less similarities. So, kapag maliit na grupo, konti lang yung mga nandun na organisms, pero sure naman na marami silang mga pinagkapare-parehas. Pag yung mga organisms, maraming mga similarities, therefore, mas closely related sila sa isa't isa. Okay? Than those na konti lang yung similarities nila. Okay? It makes sense naman. These classifications or categories consist of the domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. So, domain yung pinaka-largest, then pinaka-maliit or smallest among these classifications are the species. Okay? Yung scientific name na buo yan sa combination ng genus and species. Okay? Now, let's watch again this one.
On Earth, there are two major types of cells, prokaryotic and eukaryotic. Prokaryotic cells are the simplest and most ancient types of cells. They were the only form of life on Earth for billions of years before eventually giving rise to eukaryotic cells. If you take a look at prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells side by side, you can see a number of differences. To begin with, prokaryotic cells are a lot smaller than eukaryotic cells and have a simpler structure. But bear in mind that this simple structure is actually a good thing for prokaryotes because it allows them to reproduce very quickly and very effectively. If you were to look inside a prokaryotic cell, you would probably be surprised at how simple it is. For example, prokaryotic cells lack a nucleus. In fact, the name prokaryote actually gives you a hint about its structure. Kary means kernel or nucleus, and pro means before. So basically the word prokaryote means before nucleus. The inside of the prokaryotic cell is basically an open unit with no compartments. There are no membrane-bound organelles. However, small structures called ribosomes are scattered throughout its cytoplasm. The cell's DNA is located in a region of the cytoplasm called the nucleoid region. The nucleoid region is not the same thing as a nucleus because it's not enclosed by a membrane. Prokaryotes also have a cell wall that surrounds the plasma membrane. The composition of the cell wall depends on whether the cell is an archaean or a bacteria, but basically it consists of complex polysaccharides. Prokaryotes also often possess one or more flagella, which are used for movement. In contrast, eukaryotic cells contain a membrane-bound nucleus and other membrane-bound organelles. The name eukaryote also gives a hint about its structure. Eu means true, and remember that kary means nucleus, so in essence the word eukaryote means true nucleus. Eukaryotic cells are larger and much more complicated than prokaryotic cells. However, they do share a few things in common with prokaryotes. Let's take a look at a Venn diagram to compare prokaryotes to eukaryotes and to also see what areas they have in common. Let's start with their commonalities. Both prokaryotes and eukaryotes have DNA as their genetic material, have ribosomes, have cytoplasm, and have a plasma membrane. Now let's look at some of the ways they differ. Prokaryotic cells are the oldest type of cell. They're small and relatively simple. Eukaryotic cells evolved from prokaryotic cells later. They're larger and much more complex internally. Prokaryotes lack both a nucleus and membrane-bound organelles. Eukaryotic cells have a nucleus and also contain organelles. Prokaryotes are single-celled organisms. Eukaryotes can be either single-celled or multicellular. And finally, the DNA of a prokaryote is usually organized as a single circular chromosome, while the DNA of a eukaryote is organized as linear chromosomes.
Ayan. So, napanood natin yung pinagkaiba ng prokaryotes sa eukaryotes, no? And yung mga tao and higher forms of organisms, they have this root called the eukaryotes. Pero yung mga lower life forms, they are more on the prokaryotes. Okay. So let's move on. Let's go to taxonomy. So when we say taxonomy, in a broad sense, this is the science of classification, but more strictly the classification of living and extinct. So hindi lang yung mga nabubuhay, kasama na rin yung mga na-extinct na. The term is derived from the Greek word taxis, which means arrangement, and nomos, which means law. So meron palang law or arrangement kung paano natin kinaklasify yung mga organisms. And hindi lang yan sa Pilipinas. Ano na yan? As a whole continents, no? Kung meron man silang mga scientists per continents, per countries, ano yan? Kahit saan kang lugar pumunta, bit mo yung arrangement na yan, yung law, kung paano kinaklasify yung mga organisms. Nag-iiba-iba lang ng pangalan locally, may Tagalog, may mga dialektong tawag, tapos sa ibang bansa ganun din, kay Korea, Japan, India, Singapore, iba-iba sa local names nila. Pero yung mismong tawag doon sa species na yun, hindi na yan mag-iiba. Okay? Hindi na yan mag-iiba, lalo na yung scientific name nila. Okay? Kahit anong bansa ka pa, automatic na pasok siya kung paano siya in-arrange as a whole dito sa ating taxonomy. So, saan nga siya ulit magsisimula? Magsisimula siya sa domain, magtatapos siya sa smallest, sa species. So, para hindi natin makalimutan, alamin natin yung acronym na to. Okay? Flash ko lang lahat. Yan. So, domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. The King Philip came over for good spaghetti. Yan. Yun yung mga terms na kailangan nyo tandaan para makabisado nyo yung pagkasunod-sunod na mga yan. Yung genus and species, when they combine together, they form the scientific name. Yung scientific name na yan, it goes everywhere. Hindi yan nababago. Kaya nababago lang yung common name nila kasi may local tayong tawag. Pati sa ibang bansa, may kanya-kanyang tawag. Pero, pag sinabi mo yung scientific name, okay, matik. Iisang species yung tinutukoy natin kahit may iba't ibang tawag tayo. So, let's have this, no? Sample classification of organisms. So, we have here the cat, dog, bangus, wolf, lion. So, unahin natin yung kingdom nila. All of them belong to kingdom Animalia. Then, pababaan natin. Gawin nating phylum. Still, they have, in general, under phylum Chordata, yung may mga cord sa likod, mga spinal cord. Then, babaan natin. Okay? Class. Ito na. Only bangus is not mammals. But cat, dog, wolf, lion, they belong to class Mammalia. The bangus, since fish yan, they belong to class Actinopterygii. Okay? So, sana tama yung pronunciation ko. Mas babaan pa natin, no? Sabi nga kanina, mas lumiliit yung classification. Kumukonti sila pero marami yung mga similarities. So, order tayo. Again, ang naiba lang is bangus. Kasi yung cat, dog, wolf, lion, they are carnivora. Order carnivora. Kaya nga sila mga carnivorous, diba? Yung bangus, hindi naman carnivorous yan. Under siya ng Gonorrhynchiformis. Yan. So, iba yung kinakain nila, hindi meat, no? Family. Ayan, closer na tayo sa pinakang maliit. At ito na, medyo nag-iiba na sila. Yung lion and cat under ng family of Felidae. Okay? Naririnig natin si Felix the cat, yung mga ganyan. Yan, Felix, mas malapit siya sa Felidae. Kasi under siya si Felix the cat ay under ng family of Felidae. Ganun din yung lion. Kaya sabi nga natin, yung cat and lion, magkapamilya. Okay? Na iba lang yung size ni lion, mas bigger sila kaysa sa mga cats. But, they belong to same family. While the dog and the wolf, Canidae. Okay? Sila yung pamilya ng mga Canidae. And ito namang bangus, syempre magkaiba sila ng class. Malamang hindi sila katulad ng apat na nabanggit ko, no? Kasi isda to. So, ibang family to. Chanidae naman siya. Chanidae. And then, genus na tayo. Ayan na. Felis, si cat. Canis, si dog. Bangus, Chanos. Wolf, Canis. Lion, Panthera. So, tingnan natin si cat and si lion. They belong both to Felidae, pero pagdating sa genus, naghiwalay na, no? Mas lumiit yung, nila, relationship. Kasi, mapupunta na sa Felis, yung genus ni cat, Panthera naman si lion. Kaya nga si Pink Panther, diba? Hindi naman cat si Pink Panther. Panthera, kasi lion siya. Diba? Yun ang genus niya. But still, si dog and wolf, they still belong to same genus, Canis. Si bangus, wala na talaga yan. Magkaiba na sila ng cat, dog, wolf, lion. Kaya, si bangus ay under ng genus Chanos. Now, sabi natin, ang pinakamaliit na magdedetermine ng mismong uri ng organism na yun or pagkakailanlan is the species. Anong species? Yung cat. Okay, cat belong to the species Catus. Dog, Familiaris. Bangus, Chanos. Wolf, Lupus. Kaya nga lobo, diba? Tagalog. Lion, Leo. Leon. Ayan. So, wala na silang common, ground kasi naubos na dun sa genus, no? Ito ay magkakaibang organism na nakilala sila under species. So, may kinabibilangan man silang malalaking category, pero since ang species ay isang individual na classification, ayan, yan na yung pinaka-smallest na part ng classification natin, yung species. And genus combined with species, genus species, is equal to scientific name. So, the scientific name for the cat is Felis catus. For the dog, Canis familiaris. For bangus, Chanos chanos. For the wolf, Canis lupus. Lion, Panthera, Leo. Bakit naka-italic yung species? O ganun kasi sinusulat ang scientific name. Yung genus, hindi siya naka-italic. Pero, first letter nila, capital. And then, pagdating sa species, naka-small caps lahat, italic. Ayan. Ganun siya. Sinusulat. Next. For any organisms identified, a scientific name is given. So, kababanggit ko lang kanina. In this way, every scientist and other people from different places would use the same name for the same organism. This is what you see in the species row for each organism. You must have observed that a scientific name consists of two names, the genus and the species. So, yun yung sinabi ko kanina na binubuo ng species, genus species ang scientific name. What is binomial system of classification? So, this way of naming organism. So, kung paano mo pinapangalanan yung organisms is referred to as binomial system of classification. So, here's how. Nabanggit ko na to kanina, no? Domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Pinakamababa yung species. So, para hindi natin makalimutan, the King Philip came over for good spaghetti. Ayan siya. Take note that animals and other organisms are classified within succession of nested group that ranges from, ayan, largest to smallest. Species yung pinaka-smallest. Good morning, class. Our topic today is about the 3 domains. On the previous visual lesson that we have, we stated that there are 3 kinds of biodiversity. First one is the species diversity, next is genetic diversity, and ecosystem diversity. So, if we are talking of the different species, then it's categorized as species diversity. Then, if it is in relationship with the genes of the organisms, then it is genetic diversity. And in terms of where they live and interact with one another, then it's under ecosystem. Now, we also watched previous video about prokaryotic versus eukaryotic cells. It's very important to know this kasi ito yung pinag-ugatan natin. So, on the left is a picture showing prokaryote, and on the right, it's the eukaryote. So, U means true. So, may true nucleus ang eukaryote. Yung pro, wala. So, kita naman natin sa picture, no? Now, for the prokaryotes, pro means before. Karyo means nucleus. Before the nucleus. So, ganyan yung structure niya. Wala kasi siyang totoong nucleus. So, yan agad yung kanyang plasma membrane. Then, babalutan ng cell wall, yung kanyang balat. Then, the jelly part or the cytoplasm. And then, ayun, nakalagay lang yung DNA dun sa section na may mga naka-coil. And then, may buntot. And then, the proteins called ribosomes. Ganun lang kasimple yung structure ng prokaryote. And mostly, mga lower forms of organisms, they started as prokaryote. But eukaryote is different because it has true nucleus. U means true, karyo means nucleus. So, ganun pa rin naman, may plasma membrane, cytoplasm, and the nucleus. Yun yung 3 main parts ng isang cell, no? So, nasan yung DNA natin? Nandun sa loob ng nucleus. And then, may mga organelles siya, yung mga maliliit na organs. Organelles means little organs. So, mas maayos yung structure ni eukaryote. Therefore, yung mga higher forms ng organism rooted under eukaryote. So, this is a Venn diagram showing the difference and similarities of prokaryotes and eukaryotes. Okay, both of them have DNA, of course. They have ribosomes also. They have cytoplasm and plasma membrane. Both of these, prokaryotes and eukaryotes, have all of these. Yung DNA, ribosome, cytoplasm, and plasma membrane. Prokaryotes is the oldest type of cell, while eukaryotes evolved from prokaryotes. Prokaryotes is small and simple, while eukaryotes is larger and more complex. Prokaryotes lack nucleus, kita naman natin sa picture, but eukaryotes contain nucleus. Prokaryotes also lack of organelles, but eukaryotes contain little organs called organelles. Prokaryotes are single-celled, while eukaryotes are single-celled or multicellular. Prokaryotes have single circular chromosomes, while eukaryotes multilinear chromosomes. So, mas complex talaga pagdating sa eukaryotes. At tayo, humans, including mga animals, eukaryotes sila. Okay? Now, from this ancestry, nagkaroon tayo ng largest group to smallest group. Sinabi na natin last time, domain yung pinaka-largest. So, we have here 3 domains. So, from the first ancestral cell, yung tinapik natin kanina, prokaryotes and eukaryotes, na-divide ang groups sa 3. So, we have bacteria, archaea, and eukarya. So, these are the 3 domains. Domain bacteria, domain archaea, and domain eukarya. Under the domain bacteria, nandun yung mga bacteria. Okay? Either good or bad bacteria. Yung archaea, bacteria din sila, pero they are not mostly disease-causing. Okay? Yung bacteria kasi, sila yung mga true bacteria na may bad bacteria, good bacteria, cause ng disease, ayan. Pero si archaea, bacteria din siya, pero hindi sila yung nagkakos ng mga sakit. Okay? And then, next domain, third, eukarya. Okay? So, dito na mas complex kasi under ng eukarya are the protists, the plants, the fungi, and the animals. Okay? So far, dahil largest group on domain, yan yung 3. Okay? Organisms with a domain, tandaan yung mga domain, bacteria, archaea, eukarya, they share similar cell structures and similar ribosomal RNA. So, lahat sila present. Yung cell structures and ribosomal RNA. Lahat ng 3 present. For the prokaryotic organisms, ito yung 2 domain. Bacteria domain and archaea domain. Ang first ancestral cell nila ay galing sa prokaryotic organism. So, these organisms, itong prokaryotic na to, are single-celled and lack a membrane-bound nucleus. So, itong mga bacteria na to na nagkukos ng diseases, plus yung other domain na hindi naman nagkukos, okay, both of them are under the prokaryotic organisms. Okay? So, punta muna tayo sa domain archaea. Yung domain archaea, sila yung mga bacteria na hindi nga nagkakos ng diseases, pero nakatira naman sila sa mga extreme environment. Ano yung mga extreme environment na yan? Sobrang alat, sobrang tamis, sobrang init, sobrang lamig. Yung mga extreme, dun sila matatagpuan. While the domain bacteria, ito talaga yung mga, yun, paulit-ulit ko na sinasabi, nagkukos ng mga diseases. Okay? Ganyan sila. Saan sila nakatira? Hindi sila naninirahan sa tulad ng tinitiran ni archaea, but mostly nagiging host sila or parasite sa living organism, sa katawan. Okay? But since they are bacteria, mabilis silang mag-multiply. Okay? Anywhere naman, pag nag-thrive sila sa isang place, dumadami sila. No? Pwede sila sa katawan ng tao, sa may intestine, ayan. Pwede din sa mga animals, andun sila. Nakatabi-tabi sa kasulok-sulukang bahagi kung saan sila masaya or kung saan favorable yung yung temperature and environment sa kanila. Okay? Tapos nagkukos nga sila ng mga sakit. Pero hindi naman lahat ng under ng domain bacteria ay bad. Meron din of course mga good. Okay? Tulad nun sa Yakult, 'di ba? May good bacteria 'yon. Domains, bacteria and archaea are not closely related. Their cell walls are different. So, tulad ng sinabi ko, bacteria man sila, pero magkaiba sila. Kaya, magkaiba sila ng domain. Bacteria, may peptidoglycan, protein, polysaccharides, and lipids. Yung archaea naman na domain, walang peptidoglycan, may protein, pero yun ang absent sa archaea, yung peptidoglycan. Pero may protein, polysaccharides, and lipids. Ganun lang kasimple yung katawan nila. Pero itong eukarya, ang pinag-ugatan nito ay the eukaryotes. Kaya nga nagsimula siya sa syllable na U means true, having true nucleus. Okay, sa eukaryotes sila galing. So, meron siyang example sa protists, plants, fungi, and animals. So, dito sila nanggaling sa eukaryotic organism. They have a membrane-bound nucleus, they have organelles, and much bigger than the prokaryotes. Okay, kasi usually multicellular organism na nabubuo. Although meron pa rin naiwan na mga single-celled na eukaryotes. Under the domain Eukarya, we have 4 kingdoms. Okay, yung bacteria domain and archaea domain, may kingdom din sila kasi after ng domain, which is the largest, ang sunod is kingdom. So, i-ano muna natin yung sa domain bacteria and archaea. Domain bacteria, kingdom bacteria. Okay? Yung mga true bacteria. Domain archaea, kingdom archaea bacteria. So, kailangan may distinction, yung kingdom ng bacteria at kingdom ng archaea bacteria. Para pag narinig mo yung archaea, iisipin mo na, ito yung mga nabubuhay sa extreme environment. Mostly, hindi nila nature ang disease causing, okay, na nature. So, dito naman sa Eukarya, we have 4 kingdom. First, kingdom protists or protista. Next, kingdom plantae. Next, kingdom fungi. And kingdom animalia or animals. So, madami yung Eukarya na domain. Marami siyang kingdoms. So, yan yun, no? Protists, plants, fungi, and animals. Ito siya. Pag tinignan natin yung parang family tree, nag-start siya sa dalawa, prokaryotes, eukaryotes. Then, yung bacteria and archaea, dati kasi talaga silang as one, pero dahil may mga distinct characteristic na magkaiba, pinaghiwalay ng domain. Okay? And then, itong 4, plants, protists, fungi, animals, they belong to same domain, yung domain ng Eukarya. Eukarya. Eukarya nga. And then, nagkaroon sila ng 4 na kingdom. So, 4 sa eukaryotes, 2 sa prokaryotes, 6 kingdoms ang meron. So, this is now the 3 kung ano yung mga domains and kingdoms natin. Let's move forward to the archaea domain first. Archaea domain, isa lang ang kingdom na kinabibilangan ni kingdom archaea bacteria. So, archaean domain, kingdom archaea bacteria. Dito, organisms belong to this kingdom are all microscopic. Okay? They live in various places, some even in most severe environment. Yun yung sabi ko kanina, extreme environments, severe environments. Examples are methanogens, halophiles, thermophiles. Yung methanogens, nagsusurvive sila sa places na walang oxygen. Nagre-release sila ng methane bilang isang waste product. Okay? Gumagawa sila ng sarili ng energy through process of methanogenesis or the production of methane gas. Yung methane, napaka beneficial kasi ni-utilize yun para maging biogas, which is, ang biogas ay cheap alternative source of energy. So, thank you sa mga methanogens. Ayan yun. Pag nagpupo yung baka, then yung poops nila napunta dun sa lupa, ayan, magpa-process na yung mga methanogens dun. Ito yung itsura ng microscopic structure. Pwede din sila ma-imbak sa mga swamps, sa mga ponds, then magbabubbles yung water. Okay? Ito sila pag maramihan. Next, halophiles. Halo means salty environment. So, yung mga archaeobacteria na to, they adapt very salty environment. Okay? So, gustong-gusto nila yun, yung mga sobrang alat. Yan. Nagpapapula sila ng itsura ng water. No? Kala mo blood. Pero, ito talaga sila. Pag colony sila, pag maramihan, mga halophiles, favorite nila yung salty environment. Yan, they love salt. Next, thermophiles. Thermo means temperature. So, mahilig sila sa mga matataas sa temperature. Manabubuhay sila doon. Yan, sa mga, geysers, sa mga hot springs, ganyan yung itsura nila, tsaka color, microscope. Structure nila, ganyan. So, microscopic talaga yung mga yan, okay? Bakit dumi-dumi? Ganun ang nature nila. Kaya nagbubuo silang colony. Next, acidophiles. Acid. Dun sila mahilig. Okay? Ang pH level ay less than 3, so very acidic yon. Acidophiles belong to all three domains. Okay. So, may acidophiles din sa eukaryote, may acidophiles sa domain bacteria, meron din sa domain archaea. Okay? So, ano pinagkaiba nun? Yung structure, siguro pag eukaryote, sila, yung acidophile na yun, mas complex yung structure. Unlike dun sa domain ng bacteria and archaea. Okay, present sila dun sa tatlong yun. Ganito yung mga itsura ng archaeobacteria sa left side nyo and right side EUBACTERIA. Okay, mostly nagkukumpul-kumpul sila under the microscope, pero minsan naman single sila, kaya naka-single form. Depende sa size, sa structure, yung magiging itsura nila. So, proceed tayo. Natapos na tayo sa domain archaea, kingdom archaeobacteria. Punta naman tayo sa totoong bacteria, the bacteria domain. Kingdom EuBacteria. Eu means true na bacteria. Members of EuBacteria are unicellular and microscopic. Unicellular, uni means as one or single. And ganun pa rin, microscopic pa rin sila. They are referred to as the true bacteria and are usually called the bacteria group. Their cell walls are made of peptidoglycan and a carbohydrate. Okay, so matibay-tibay kahit maliliit sila. Bacteria consist of very diverse group. They vary in shapes. They can be found in almost all kinds of places. Saan? Soil, water, air. Lahat, present sila sa mga hilaw na pagkain, sa mga panis na pagkain. Yung iba nabubuhay sa loob ng katawan ng isang organism. Pwede din sa labas. Okay? So, they cause disease, itong mga true bacteria na to, and nagkakos din ng harm sa other organism. But most importantly, bacteria have a variety of uses for the environment as well as humans, no? So nakikita nyo yung picture, no? May halaman, may rabbit, and then ayun na. Yung mga nitrogen-fixing bacteria na bumuhay sila dun sa roots ng isang halaman, okay? Ng mga legumes. And then, yung mga decomposers naman, such as bacteria and fungi, nakaabang lang din sila. Yan, tingnan niyo yung role na ginagampanan ng mga materials sa environment. Kakaroon ng assimilation, o di ba may assimilation din sa plants, hindi lang sa digestive system ng tao. Then meron din tayong denitrifying bacteria, okay? Tapos may mga nitrogen fixing bacteria. So ito ay nakakatulong itong mga bacteria na to process yung mga absorbable nutrients para sa uptake ng mga halaman. And yung halaman, malaki ang role na ginagampanan kasi plants are very important to Earth, okay? Kasi nag-give up yan ng oxygen na kailangan naman natin, mostly. So, sa tulong ng mga bacteria na to, magkakaroon tayo ng nitrogen, okay? Na usable form. So, ito yung mga shapes, okay, basic shapes ng bacteria. Coccus, diplococci, streptococci, coccus single, okay, circle, diplococci, bilog, per dalawa. Pag streptococci, naka-chains. So, iba-iba yan. Staphylo, tetrad, sarcina, okay, diplococci. So, ayan ang arrangement. Pag bacillus naman, bacilli, plural, ganyan yung mga shapes nila. Okay? Nagpo-form sila hindi lang single but also in colony. Basic shapes ng bacteria. Nasabi ko na yan kanina. Singular, coccus, plural, cocci. Mostly spherical or roughly spherical. Yung mga bilog-bilog. They can form in pairs. Pag pair, diplo. Okay? Coccus, di means dalawa. Okay? Sa diplo, coccus. Pag streptococcus naman, chain. Okay? Pag cluster, staphylo. Yun pala yung mga terms, no? Diplo means pares. Strepto means naka-chain. Staphylo, kumpul-kumpul, cluster. Pag bacilli naman, plural yon, single bacillus. Ang shape naman nito ay rod. Okay? Pwede din silang mag-occur in chains. Tatawagin silang streptobacilli. Okay? Kasi nga, pag strepto, it means chain. Next. Ayan, ito na yung mga different examples ng ating bacteria. Okay? Yung mga true bacteria. Ito yung sa acne natin. Ito yung sa tuberculosis. Ayan. Ito yung sa leptospirosis. Sa anthrax. Ayan, Streptomyces caseus. Streptomyces venezuelae. Ano pa? E. coli. Okay? Lactobacillus bulgaricus, mga lactobacilli niyan. Streptococcus thermophilus. Ayun. So, marami pang iba yon, pero yun lang yung common na binanggit ko. So, that ends our discussion.